I have great pleasure in introducing my own mentor, a person from whom I have learned a lot right from my childhood, the chairman of Department of Orthopedics, Trauma and Spine Surgery at Ganga Hospital and the director of the hospital, Professor Dr. S. Rajasekaran. He is currently, the positions he's holding now is the chairman of the AVO Spine International Board and is the president-elect of the Asia Pacific Spine Society. I'm extremely happy to let all of you know that he has been the chair of AVO Spine International Research Commission, president of SICOT, president of CRS Asia Pacific, president of Indian Orthopedic Association, president of Association of Spine Surgeons of India, president of International Society of Lumbar Spine based in Canada, president of the World Orthopedic Concern UK. He was the chief national delegate of the Asia Pacific Orthopedic Association. Apart from several administrative and responsible positions, phenomenal contributions to the literature, has 277 publications in international journals, 53 in national publications, 447 international and 515 national presentations. He has contributed 60 chapters in international books. He is the chief editor of the Video Atlas of Spine Surgery and the ASSI textbook of Spine Infection and Trauma. Has several awards to his credits, both national and international, and phenomenal contributions in research. The previous topic was on research, and he has done phenomenal contributions. Noteworthy are many, but I wanted to say the ISS, the International Study of Lumbar Spine Prize for Spine Research for the year 2004, 2010, 2013, and 17 belongs to Professor Dr. Rajasekaran. And today he's going to talk to us on a very pertinent topic that we have all gone through, pandemic blues. The lessons learned beyond medicine is something which would be very insightful. We are extremely delighted to have you with us, sir. Over to Professor Dr. Rajasekaran to share his thoughts.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Just now I heard that more than nearly 2,000 delegates are tuned in from 50 different countries, and this is a great honor. Now, the reason that I wanted to choose a different topic, and also a very timely one, so thank you, Bala, for this great opportunity. And I understand that more than 2,000 delegates are tuned in from 50 different countries, and that's a great honor to be here. Now, I chose the topic of lessons learned beyond medicine, mainly because of the fact that for the last 10 months, the whole world has undergone an upheaval. The virus showed its face, and all of us had to go behind a mask. Sorry, we are closed has become the commonest signs that we saw. Streets became empty, businesses were closed, people were locked in, and even the normal ways of human affection, of hugging, handshake, holding hands, and even mothers kissing their own children became a taboo. Humans were distant from each other, and nearly 1.56 million of the people have died, unfortunately. So there has been a lot of adversity and mental trauma. Many times we thought that this is going to last only for a few months, and without our knowledge, without a hope, this is going on extending. So much of despair, so much of suffering. The only question is, apart from this, can this COVID time teach us anything? Now, there is a famous saying which says, "What happiness cannot teach, adversity will, for it is the greatest of the great teachers." And what I'm going to talk today, I would like to make a disclaimer first that this is nothing about medicine. It's purely about a personal thought process. And what I found by observing what are all the changes that happened in more than 1,850 of our hospital staff with whom I work very closely, and all the family, dear and near acquaintances. Now, of these 1,850, 246 stayed away from work for various reasons. 59 staff and 19 doctors turned positive. 40 of them were symptomatic, but fortunately, no mortality. But behind this scenario, what really interested me was that there was a huge difference in which people responded to the scenarios. Both people who were positive and both people who were negative, and how they approached this scenario. And that taught me an important thing, that the person one is mattered much more than the virus itself. Now, this was really true because COVID threw the same challenges to all of us. But the way some of us responded was quite different, and we came out of it quite differently. Now, as Sadhguru has said, what the world throws at us is not our choice, but what we make out of it is our choice. And this I found really true because people responded to this situation in three different ways. Either they complained and they feared, or they adapted and moved on, or some more people reinvented and made actually a good new model by which they became better. So we all know that professional work is not merely clinical work, but there is much more to it. The government locked down the nation, and so there was a drop in the clinical work. But there was learning and teaching to do. There were newer techniques to learn in the time available, a lot of time for research. We could audit and improve ourselves, and we could plan for alternative things that we could do. Now, these actually many of us did. But there were also another group which sent a minimum decent, acceptable time in the departments, most of it on WhatsApp and chit chat, and then left. Now, this actually, as I observed, clearly showed that it is not the government, it's not the situation that makes people different. It is actually a personal choice. Now, the government can force a national lockdown, but a personal lockdown at an individual level is actually an individual option. So, this taught me two things. One is, as the leader of the unit, a lot depends on myself than what's happening outside to make us go forward. It also helped me to understand everyone in our unit better and identify the future leaders of our institution. This was so important for me. COVID also actually shattered many of our thought processes. Now, commonly it is said and discussed, having less work and more time for ourselves is a good solution to improve. Now, COVID actually broke that myth. This is not true at all. We have always been complaining of that we have a lot of work, no free time, less family time, no leisure activities, no time for academics, and nil research time. We were always tired. We were always tired with no time to do anything. But suddenly, when Corona came, everything became different and was opposite. Less work and a lot of time. But the central question is, did the productivity of us go up? This was very obvious to me in the first few weeks of the lockdown. We were working at about 10% of our normal clinical work. Because there was a national lockdown, there was no time to socialize, impossible. And so there was all the time that you wanted to have in your hand. And indeed, I appeared to be busy. I actually use the word appeared to be busy because at the end of the day, rarely it translated to an increased productivity. Now, that actually taught us another thing. As Peter Drucker said, work expands to the time available. Now, what I would have written a case report in one day, I was actually taking 4 days to write. And also, as Winston Churchill said, all activity is not productivity. We had something to do from morning to night. But at the end of 2 days, if you ask, what have you achieved? Many times we could not find anything to tell about. So the learning was productivity is less about the time you have in your hands, and it is more about how you actually run your mind. And getting sucked into social media was one of the worst things that happened for all of us. And obsessing over endless coronavirus. Every single itch, every single sneeze we did, we ran back to look at the coronavirus coverage, panicking, fearing, and this was actually a contraindication to progress. I also found very interestingly that most of us tend to have a lot of unnecessary arguments about matters outside our interest and power of action. There was a lot of tea room discussion on how our prime minister must manage our lockdown. Not just how our prime minister must manage, but we also were discussing about how the British prime minister must manage the Britain and how the president of the United States must manage United States, all for no activity. Now, this is most important that we cannot waste time, especially when you have a lot of time in your hand and you can never recycle a wasted time. So we need to get focused on exactly what we need to do. And it was obvious that rather than time management, what was required was self management. And it is more important to plan your day very meticulously when you have plenty of time than when you're very busy. Because when you have a lot of time, there is a lot of time that you really waste. Now, this was also true for the eternal dilemma on the work life balance, which especially has become the hot topic in medical groups now. Again, it was very well shown that less work was not the solution for a work life balance. If you look at the social media, there is a lot of junk. I say junk because I feel very strong about it. There is a lot of material that says work is bad and life is good, which means that work and enjoying life are completely different things. And if you go into the media, it looks like this. Now, this is the mood of a person when he finishes his work on a weekend and he is going back to work. That means that's the joyful thing. And this is how one is supposed to feel when you go to work on a Monday morning. Now, all these things make you really feel that work is really bad. But Corona actually showed us that not having a satisfying work is the greatest misery and, in fact, the greatest stress of all, too. When you don't have work, when you're not performing, you tend to fall in your own eyes. And that is the greatest fall any one of us can have. If you talk of family happiness, divorces and broken families were more when there is unemployment and decreased work. And it became obvious that meaningful work gives us meaning to our life. Now, this is an article in a very important journal, a new COVID-19 crisis. Domestic discordance and abuse rises worldwide, which actually proved that happiness is a very individual issue and not related to work. Happy people are happy with or without COVID, with or without work. Unhappy people are unhappy. Complaining people always complain. Happy families enjoyed their time before Corona, during Corona, after lockdown. And fighting families actually fought more when they had more time. So, if you and your wife are happy soulmates, if you and your life partner are happy soulmates, you will be happy wherever position it is. Corona actually really clearly showed to us that married life and happiness in life is a very, very individual thing. Beyond the family time. There was, especially when you have a lot of free time. What was more important also was the value of good company. It's so important, it was seen, that you surround yourself with positive people. We have always been told that we are the sum total average of the five people with whom you spend the maximum time. If this is true, then when you have all the time in the world in your hands, it becomes even more important that you surround yourself with the positive people. Now, this is something that impressed me very much. Big Panda and the Tiny Dragon. Panda asks the eternal question, which is more important, the journey or the destination? Now, there are so many posters which says the journey is more important. But the Tiny Dragon is so clever. It says more than both of these, the company with which you go and company with which you travel is the most important. How true. It's so important that you surround yourself with good people. It's also important that you have good people around you in times of stress, because perceptions about everything in life vary individually. This is such an important cartoon I like. Now he says, we only live once, Snoopy. And this is such a common phrase which is used in the WhatsApp and social media. We only live once, so why don't we enjoy? We only live once, why should we work? We only live once, so why don't we get distracted? But Snoopy, in all its cleverness, says, you're wrong. We only die once. We live every day, which means that we really need to save and savor every one of our living day. Because if you don't have the right attitude, if you fear unnecessarily, if you panic, you die before you're really dead. And this is what we actually found. And this was the cause for the stress, the phobia, the psychological distress in most of the people in the time of COVID. There is a good in every evil, just as two sides there are to every coin. And what you focus on ultimately depends on the company you keep. So, more than anywhere, any time else, it became important with whom you are associated with. It also became obvious that the fundamental truths that were taught to us from our young age, but which we had forgotten over a period of time, was becoming more obvious in this time. Discipline and being responsible was more important than economic development. Because the virus showed being a great equalizer. It had no respect for status or affluence or power. It treated everybody equally, whether you're of a royal status or you're the past president, you're a cabinet minister, you're a learned professor, or you're a person on the street. If you were responsible, if you were disciplined, and you were responsible for your life, you lived. If you are irresponsible, irrespective of who you are, you died. And it also taught us that one's responsibility does not stop for his own life, and it extended to others' lives too. Now, we can take this as a starking example, something which is discussed in the news media and newspapers every day. One of the most developed countries in the world, with the highest per capita income, with the highest number of Nobel Prize winners, with the highest number of intellects. Now you can see how, when many other countries have gotten to control corona, the corona keeps increasing over there. 15.7 million people affected and 293,000 people dead. And unfortunate statistics, all because of lack of discipline, lack of denial, a lot of disinformation, and poor leadership. It just shows that at a time of crisis, it's not how rich you are. Now, what happens to nations can also be extended to families, to societies, and even to individuals. So, in times of this crisis and challenging times, it does not matter how learned you are, how rich you are, of what societal class you are. It really depends upon how disciplined you are and what is the importance of command and control in these types of times of. Now, apart from these, the other important thing it is important and which was clearly demonstrated was the capacity and the need for adaptability. Now, in every crisis lies an opportunity, and people who adapted and adopted opportunities survived or even flourished. Now, this is a topic which is disputed, but it's very appropriate. When written in Chinese, the word crisis is supposed to have two characters. One represents danger, and the other represents opportunity. So, whether you look at the danger part of it and get panicked and you become frozen, or you look at the opportunity part of it and you thrive, depends actually on you and how you adapt. Now, we saw while a lot of people became bankrupt. I read in the papers a few days ago that this period of COVID has registered some of the highest number of new millionaires in the world. Now, how is this possible? That's just because people seized the opportunities. E-commerce companies started selling groceries, fruits, and vegetables. Car makers started making ventilators. Winemakers started producing hand sanitizers. And this kind of opportunity, adaptability, was seen in the field of education and medical practice too. We have to be resilient. Education will be completely redefined and has been redefined in this 10 months. Big libraries like this, warehouses of the best books. I don't know what will be their status in the years to come. Because it's not even everything is available on the internet. People have got into the psyche, into the discipline, into the habit of learning everything from the computer, not from the desktop, but from handheld devices. And especially from this device, which everybody has one in the hand. And it is predicted that 40% of all business transactions are up to 70% of education may happen by a handphone. And we saw this happening in telemedicine too, where big opportunities came. Although there were many cartoons like this, for us, even in our hospital, it allowed us to extend our expertise to a very large area of geography. Suddenly, we were able to reach to patients worldwide. I was really surprised in one of my telemedicine sessions a few days ago. For every two patients whom I would have otherwise consulted anyway, there was one person who was coming from at least a different country and from countries where we normally would not connect. And this was a great opportunity. Apart from this, it also brought to us thoughts like, should we have new protocols? Why should we have patients visiting from far away? Because 60% of our patients are outside the state. Why should we not have all our first reviews by telemedicine? And by telemedicine, more frequent reviews are possible whenever needed for distant patients. And it avoided a costly travel and only reassurance was required. So distances were shattered, were no longer a barrier, but there became a new barrier called language. And the world was becoming a global village, and the potential was becoming immense. Now, these were many of the pointed lessons that were available to us and which I learned. But there are also many, many more important lessons that came across the way. Now, we all are now talking about being individualistic. But COVID taught us the law of interdependency. It taught us that the well being of each of us depends very much on others, and that we are actually citizens of a global village. We are affected by the food habits, travel habits, cultural, social, and religious habits of everyone else in the world. What people ate or what people practiced in a small village or Wuhan in China, we just saw how much the whole world could get affected. So it got re-emphasized that each one of us are interdependent. The COVID-19 showed clearly, crystal clearly, that all of us of humanity are in the same boat. we either sail together or sink together. Since the virus can be defeated somewhere, only when it is defeated everywhere. It just showed how a catastrophe or a pandemic in one part of the world is a catastrophe to rest of the world. And we cannot achieve anything in isolation within the borders of our nation, culture, class, or religion. Now, this is something that the leaders of the world have to think to. But this, I would like to quote a small poem which was written by a Tamil poet, Poonkondranar. He is supposed to be timed at about 3000 years ago. And he has written, I am a world citizen. Every man is my kith and kin. We belong to every place, and everyone is our own. In everyone's well being lies anyone's well being. This is an absolute piece of wisdom, which actually is so applicable to this period of modern age, but thought about and written in so many centuries ago, known to us, but we had forgotten. But it's time we realize this again. Now, people started thinking beyond self, but it is not only between men of different religion, culture, and nation, but it is also the relationship of man with nature that what was brought back into focus. It should be man with nature. That will be the growth, and not when man is against nature. There is no rainbow without rain. Everything can end tomorrow. When all this is over, I read this in one of the essays. Earth will continue to spin and life will flow again. Let us be mindful of our earth and protect it so that it will be kind to us. There is no rainbow without rain. Let's remember that. There is no GJ without one flower. We humans are fragile by ourselves. Our strength lies in being a part of a community. Sharing is caring. Sometimes we need to remember how important kindness is. And I'm so glad that the medical fraternity came out as a great example of this. At this time of challenge, when even places of worship were closed for a very, very long time. But because of us, places of healing and cure, all the hospitals were open. And naturally, the whole world clapped for us. I think this was a good time when medical fraternity connected towards the society. And we should augur and augment this forever. True uncertainty of human existence and vulnerability of life was shown to us. And life, although precious, we all knew that it can have an abrupt end. And it reminded us that we should ask the most basic questions of life again. What are we here for? What have we done with our lives? What do we yet wish to do if given the opportunity? Who is truly important on our lives? What is it that we truly cherish? Now, this can be for a nation, this can be for a society, this can be for an institution, and this can be for us, each one of us, as an individual also. The pandemic also led us to some painful insights. If we know who is truly important to us and what is truly important and what we truly cherish, then why have we spent so little of our lives pursuing these things? Now, this is quite important. Now, on a personal note, there was 5 times that I had to get tested because of close exposure. And every one of these times that led me to ask these same questions. And I actually found that although we are very proud, very happy, we cherish having built Ganga Hospital. One of the most important things that I found it more happier was building a much smaller rehabilitation center for spinal cord injured patients. And that actually made me take the full decision that we should build a similar center for stroke patients and also establish a large charity foundation for education for the underprivileged children and also for the promotion of this. And that I could do it within a period of 10 days, mainly because some of these anxious moments gives you the power to make good and definite decisions. Now, if you need to change yourself and if you need to do something, this is something important to know. You just need 21 days to develop a good habit or throw out an unwanted one. So, whatever you need to do, you can easily do. Lastly, before I close, it is just my plea that we should all come out of these challenging times as a champion. Now, I am sure that the COVID will go in a few months at different points of time in different countries. We are not very sure whether there will be a resurge or a second or a third wave, but we all hope and pray that when it moves out in a few months' time, that will be the end, like many other epidemics went away. And if we have to move it into and emerge from this as a champion, one of the most important things is that we should not have any of the bad feelings. We should come out of the fear. We should come out of the anxiety, have positive feelings, and move ahead. And what more can I say than showing this man and what he said when he came out of the longest lockup we ever know. We are lamenting about 30-day lockdown, 40 days lockdown, and that too we are locked down and locked up with our family, close and near ones. But Nelson Mandela was for 27 years in solitary confinement. And as he walked out, he said these words which we all have to remember. As I walked out of the door towards the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I will still be in prison. Such a wonderful word, and I think it applies to all of us. Many of us have had financial issues, economic issues, mental issues, family issues, lot of problems. But if we have to come out as a champion, we have to bury all of them. Learn all the lessons that we learned, not forget them, but move forward in great positivity. So, with these, I would say that let's all smile now, counting our blessings, because we have the biggest blessing from God, while more than 2.5 million have died in this world, and more than 10 million have suffered. All of us are hale and healthy, and we are alive. What more reason can we need to smile? So let me close this smiling. Thank you, Bala, and thank you, organizers of GARC, for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for that insightful talk on how every challenge gives us an opportunity to think differently and evolve differently and emerge stronger. And I'm really happy that when most of them were complaining that this is a time which they went into a lot of depression, you gave a real insightful message on how every negative timing could be converted into positivity. Thanks for sharing with us, and I'm really happy that this was listened by over 2,000 people across the world. Thanks for being with us amidst your busy schedule, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Baba. Thank you.